Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of One Vision, the Fintech Views. This is Theo, your host for today's episode. Joining us from across the pond today, and someone I just realized I called him my long lost brother because we have a lot more things in common than I thought, is Joe Blake OBE, founder and CEO of GFA Exchange, and a man of many talents. We're unpeeling it like an onion as we speak. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Hey, how you doing? It's great to be here, Theo. Pleasure to be here. Amazing opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you for spending time with me. I think we've been running in the circuit together and in parallel for quite a while. We just never seem to have time to sit down and
Absolutely.
talk beyond the conference halls. Quick catch up, which is always a struggle because you're taller than me, and I'm like, okay, hi.
Yeah, but
So
you're larger than me, so I can always hear you, so that's fine.
Oh, I can take that both ways, by the way. All right. So let's
It's
get right. We can do this the whole morning, by the way. I will remember that. All right. So let's get right to who is Joe? Because that's the question that I was dying to know until we actually had time to catch up recently. We know that you are with GFA Exchange, which we'll get into in a little bit. You are a board advisor, you're a chair of trustees, you're a VC scout, and I joke that you are a Time Lord also. This is like my geeky Doctor Who reference because you have so many things. Like, unless you can zoom past, travel in a telephone booth from place to place. I don't know how you do that. I was dizzy going through like, oh, what should we talk about? So tell us, who is Joe? And if someone asks, what would you tell them?
It's funny when someone asks me that, I have to literally sit down and think to myself, yeah, I do that, don't I?
See,
Um,
it's not just me.
but I would say I'm a rebel in a suit. Um, I'm a type of person who likes to go into traditional spaces and disrupt them from within for positivity. Um, and so all my work and all my experiences to date have been about embracing being the as you quite rightly corrected me, not an anomaly, but being the difference in the room, whether it be based on experience, based on race, based on not going to university, whatever the difference may be, but still bringing in that sense of support and nurture in the room. And just over the years, I've been able to do that from, supporting people at a grassroots level right through to global boardrooms and C-suite executives, but all with that same passion. So I guess the day to day is as a fintech founder and CEO, obviously through GFA Exchange, and then working across fintech and the financial services sector in the main, looking at how we can create a much more inclusive financial ecosystem for all, both here and abroad. So that's kind of me, and I'm not happy to get into some of that, but overarchingly, that's who I am.
Someone who is there to make a difference and make things more meaningful for others, right?
Yeah, 100%. It's funny. I've always looked at um, this thing that it's about maximizing the potential of others, regardless of their difference. That's always been a huge driver for me at my core, um, and that started from the age of 14, 15. In my local youth club at the time, which we don't much have. We don't have youth centres anymore, do we? It seems across the world, but certainly in the UK. But helping my peers in the local youth centre, um, volunteering, just trying to be a good kid with good morals as much as I had growing up in a working class in a city environment. To now, as a leader, trying to really democratize access to finance for inclusive innovation. That's my thing, if you like. And certainly looking at how we can make sure that finance in of itself becomes a real tool for change whilst unapologetically being commercially successful in doing it.
This is amazing. And I think it speaks a lot to you as a person. It speaks a lot to you with the lived experience you have, the people
Mm,
you have come across, different walks of life, and all of that make Joe who you are today.
mm,
So go back in time a little bit. See, Time Lord. Back in 2016, you were awarded
yeah.
an OBE for services to business support and enterprise. That was a huge, huge recognition. Um,
Mm,
you've done a lot of work across professional services, tech and fintech, NGO communities nationwide in the UK, just like what you just talked about. What drives you what you do? Or in
mm.
your words, why do you do what you do? The people
Yeah.
that you have met, you said that you want to maximize others' potentials, which is beautiful. Um,
Mm.
why do you want to do that?
Real personal foundation for me in everything I do professionally. Um, and before we get the Kleenex out and start rubbing our eyes and blowing our noses with
I
my
know
own
I was
personal
like, I
story,
need Kleenex
which
because
which I won't go too much into, but um, my life started out in a working class inner city background, and when you grow up in that environment, you're already destined not to achieve. Society has a particular view on individuals who come from those backgrounds, and when you're somebody of color and university wasn't something that was seen as achievable for both you and everyone else who was in your ecosystem, both on a community level, family level, multi-generational level. Um, you just survive day by day. And I was fortunate that I was never someone who wanted to go into the wrong way of surviving, if you like. I always knew I wanted to achieve something. I just never knew what that was. Um, and call it fate, call it whatever way you wish. I had a bit of a contrasting lifestyle in that the reality was the reality I was living in. But in relation to my father, he ran Europe's Europe's largest entertainment center in the 80s. So when you think about a lot of the American acts who used to come to the UK and from the Caribbean and from Asia and from Europe, my dad's club was kind of the breakout club to kind of be established outside of your home country. Everything from, Public Enemy, Wu-Tang Clan, Nirvana, Has Martins, Bon Jovi, all of these brands and large bands would come through my dad's nightclub. So when I would see my father, and my mum and dad worked together when I was from 2 years old onwards, but it was always around, it was never absent in that sense, but they weren't in the home. So when I was with my father, it was very much a aspirational lifestyle. And then I'd come home and it's the reality check again. So I always had this contrast of there's more than just my experience, and I have this ability to aspire to achieve what I wish to achieve. Um, but I didn't know how. But key next moment. At the age of 14, I kind of decided that I no longer wanted to be here. And I made a decision that I was going to no longer be a burden on my mother when she was doing a second job or whatever for the evening, or for the day. And she left me at home to kind of look after myself for a couple of hours while she went on her cleaning job. And I felt like I didn't need to be here anymore. So I made a decision to not be here. And I was about to jump off a balcony and I was saved by somebody who didn't even know they saved me. In the sense of they were just going about their day to day in the evening and didn't see me, but I could see them. And because of their situation, knowing they were from the same area, because of what they went through, I felt, well, why am I pitying myself when somebody else who's worse than me is happy in their existence? What does that say about how I need to see myself? And that was the turning point at the age of 14 for me to control my own destiny, so to speak. And so that was the fundamental, personal, foundational switch in my own mentality that's underpinned everything that I've done since then. You know, started working in factories, started getting jobs as a tea boy in offices, became an employment mentor, started building consultancies, built a recruitment company, went into financing, and the rest is history. But I've never forgotten that turning point. So when people talk about business and successes, whether it be academic achievement, whether it be professional achievement, whether it be actual commercial successes, being focused on your fundamental reason why is essential, because that underpins the direction of travel that life will take you on and what keeps you on track, regardless of what direction you go on to or go into. And sometimes as leaders, we are afraid to embrace our own vulnerability because of our titles and because of our roles and because of the masks that we wear. When in reality, we're human beings, and there are lessons learned in every positive and negative engagement in your life that you can implement. And as time has gone on and maturity set in, I've put things into context to understand what drives me. And that's what I take into my professional career. And I like to think it's worked.
And I think it worked. And I think I might suggest yet another additional role to the 15 other things that you're doing. I think you need to be a teacher. Both of my parents are from education backgrounds, and
Mhm.
I won't take the time to share the details, but they very much influenced me, what I do, and my mom's upbringing and things that she experienced. And what you just told me gives me that feeling of how she talks to me and how she brought me up when I was young. And there's a lot that we learn from hearing other people's stories, things that we might already know fundamentally, but it resonates differently when you hear someone else narrate it. And I
I
think a
respect
lot of
that.
people can learn from you.
I respect that. Thank you. And I think we were talking off air about, enjoying the time to spend with people and facilitate learning and understanding. And that's something that I do genuinely enjoy. Um, and so you mentioned kind of the OBE award. And I guess for me, that was a kind of a 360 full circle moment, because it was for driving change from that passion point and seeing my parents and my wife experiencing and my children experiencing that time, in Buckingham Palace, and getting that award was arguably one of the proudest moments, but also one of the most conflicting. And I'll share why. And this is why life is such a beautiful thing, but it has its ups and downs. Obviously, coming from an ethnic minority background, there's the historical view of British colonialism and how that's affected communities, and individuals within them. And so, with my parents coming from the Caribbean, England was always seen as the mother country, right? The Queen, rest in peace. Her head was on towels and cups and saucers and
Currency
all manner of stuff.
everywhere.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, absolutely everywhere. So the aspiration for people from the Caribbean and other countries to come to the UK was largely based on that piece. And obviously, coming to the UK, different reality in some areas. But to be inside the home of the Queen for your child, with all the sacrifices that you've made in order to instill standards and values in your child, that's now been manifested into the success that he's now being recognised for, was the 360 moment for my parents and my family. And it was the first time I saw my dad shed a tear in probably 40 years. That was amazing. But at the same time, it's still that kind of legacy baton of colonialism. What do you now represent by accepting a medal from the British Empire in that regard? And it made me really go through a real personal reflection and conversations with family, with friends, with the community before I accepted that award. I accepted it simply because it's about the legacy. It's about taking the lessons from adversity and owning the narrative of how you're going to use that to create a better future. And that approach, again, is what I try and take into my professional career, in that, particularly in fintech and finance, where there are often traditional and conservative sectors that have gone under and are going under and will continue to be part of a revolutionary change. There's adversity and there's shifts and there's things that need to be done and worked upon in order to adapt to that change. And it's those type of life experiences for me that I like to bring into a boardroom, an arena, wherever I am, to help people to understand what that journey means to them and where the successes will come from through the transformation that they were going through and the practicality of how you deal with that. So a bit of a really long-winded answer, I'm afraid, there, Theo, but I guess the personal drivers underpins the professional drivers, which then underpins the impacts that I believe can be created in that way.
This is probably one of the most beautiful podcasts I've had the honor to do. I appreciate this. I don't even remember. I'm trying to think as you're talking. I'm trying to think back how we met. And I don't remember. I just know it's somewhere on LinkedIn somehow. Either you were speaking at someone's event that I know, or somehow someone connected. I think it might have been Lida, actually.
Yeah. I was going to say it was Lida.
It was Lida.
And I think it was Lida, and I think it was Fintech Week
London. It was Rav. Always Rav. Rav's events the past few years has always managed to bring the most thoughtful people in the group. I've told him that this is a shout out to our friends.
100%.
So, yeah, right.
Big up, Ralph.
Thank you, Rav. We need more people like you. We need more people like him. Dare to be different and proud to be different.
100%.
So wow, I don't even know. I know we had a set of questions. My brain is you should have told me I need Kleenex. I can't wait for, there are a lot of things I can envision your next phase to be. I can't wait to see that. Before we get there, let's take a step back, look at where we are right now. From where I sit on this side of the pond to where you sit on your side of the pond. We live in unprecedented times. I try very hard to rationalize where we are right now, especially, as parents, with children. How do we even explain to them, why are we where we are? What is the meaning of the trade wars, the tension between countries, between communities, between everything? Everything is uncertain. One day we have X, the next day we don't have X. One day everything is like 175% more expensive. The next day things are disappearing. We've been going through this the last few years. Against everything else that's going on, there's the lurking challenges that we don't seem to be able to solve. Some of the climate crisis is a big one. What you just talked about, with old attitudes from the colonial past. I feel it growing up in Hong Kong.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's like when you were talking about, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember the Twinnings tea, right? You see that logo right there. Every single step of the way, you're reminded of the past and how it comes to be. Now, I am trying really hard to be optimistic, and you're way better than I am when it comes to that. People say never let a good crisis go to waste. For me, I just keep digging a hole and hide in there. Clearly, you are not that, because you've been able to do so much and continue to do a lot. So for for those who look up to you, for people who want to be mission driven, for people who are searching for purpose and,
Mm.
they want to achieve something, what is that something? They want to make a difference in the world. What would you tell them?
It's a really, really great question. I'm hesitating because it depends on the audience and depends who you're talking to, right? But if you're talking about entrepreneurs and those who are mission driven in that sense, I think it's about really clarifying the vision alongside validating the problem that you want to solve. So allow me to dive into that. In terms of the clarifying the vision, let me take you through a little quick. I want to take you through a little quick exercise on that. So
Uh-oh.
imagine it. So imagine the dream house, right? Imagine the
Yeah.
dream house, right? Um, Describe to me what the house looks like.
Uh-oh. You really want to know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I do not like furniture. So my
Yeah,
house will be minimal furniture,
yeah,
but except bookshelves. I love bookshelves.
yeah.
We have 4 bookshelves in the house, and I still have books on the floor. It's everywhere. So it will have literally a lot of windows and a lot of bookshelves filled with books and Legos.
Okay,
And
so
that's
hold
it.
that thought. Okay, so hold that thought. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how does it feel when you think about that house with those bookshelves?
Happy.
Right. On a
And
scale of
then
1 to 10.
also at the same time, really annoyed because I'm looking in front of me right now. I'm like, oh my God, this is so far from what I want to be.
So but on a scale of 1 to 10, how does it feel when you think about that house with the bookshelves?
Really happy. Can I just stay there?
Yeah, but I don't give me a number. Zero to
Hmm.
0 to 10. How would that make you feel?
10.
10. Right. Okay. So I want you to think about that house now still, right? And what colour is the front door?
Okay. Knock on the front door?
Yeah, what colour is the front door of your house?
What's on the front door of my house?
Yeah, what colour is the front door?
A hmm. Hmm. Let me think. Don't know. Oh, that's rough. I have no idea. Dark blue. Actually, you know what?
Okay,
Blue, royal blue. Yes.
right, blue. Okay,
Yes.
so walk into that. So in your mind,
Okay. Uh-huh.
what colour's the floor? What colour's the floor in your house? Have you got carpet or is it wooden floor?
Hardwood. Hardwood. Yes. Wood.
Hardwood. What colour's the hardwood?
Dark brown.
Okay. Have you got a kitchen?
Mm, yeah. Of course, I love food.
Okay. Right. Okay. So walk in. So walk into the kitchen.
Okay.
What what colour's the kettle?
What? No, no kettle. I don't need a kettle. Coffee machine.
No kettle.
Coffee machine. Definitely
Okay.
coffee machine.
What colour's the coffee machine?
Stainless steel and black. Yeah.
What brand is the coffee machine?
Oh. I don't know. What brand? Keurig, I guess. I don't know. Jira.
Okay.
Jira is
Okay.
actually better. Yes.
Okay. Final question.
I feel like I'm going through an exam.
No, no, no. Now, final question. Imagine there's a set of plates on the actual table in the kitchen.
Okay.
What color are those plates?
White. Plain.
Okay,
No
so
pattern.
okay, so having gone through that process of understanding the detail of things within the house, how do you now feel about that house on a scale of 0 to 10?
Still 10.
Right. But do you feel more emotionally connected to the house now that you've got some detail?
Yeah. Really?
Right. Right. That's the art of clarifying the vision. So the reason why I take you through that process, because sometimes when we have a vision about something, it's this thing that makes us feel excited, it makes us feel full of joy, it makes us feel happy. It's only when we get into the detail of the vision and understanding the clarification of the detail do we truly become connected to that vision. Because it's the connection of and the emotional connection to the vision that's going to take you through those times of challenge when you're working towards achieving that vision. The lofty grandeur ideas are wonderful, but they can shift depending on how you feel on the day. But if you're very detailed to achieve and the why, and you're emotionally connected to that detail, you're more likely to achieve that probably quicker than you even thought. Because your brain and your world has a wonderful way of transferring and adapting to what it is that you truly ask for and what you truly want. So if you're a mission-driven leader, it is essential that you take the time out to really understand what the clarity of detail is about why you're on this mission. If your mission is to create a business, I don't know, that wants to help feed 1 million people, okay, fine. What countries, by what date, what the people are going to look like, what's the expression on their faces when they have that meal? Like, get into the detail of the vision. Because when the proverbial hits the fan, it's that clarity of vision that's going to take you through those tough times. And the second, I would say, for mission-driven entrepreneurs is to really validate the problem. I've done this myself. You've experienced a problem, you've got a solution, and you think that's a solution everyone's going to want. Particularly with the UK financial system, I would say, but arguably other financial systems, the solutions that are designed to help individuals don't actually have the individuals involved in the planning of the solution. They're often seen as the beneficiary. This is what they need. This is what they want. This is what our research says. This is what we believe. But I believe that if you're going to validate the problem first, you're going to do that because you won't be afraid to speak to the individuals that you're trying to support. And it seems fairly obvious, right? You want the people, you want to do your customer focus groups, you want to get user validation, etc., etc., etc. But quite often, we don't validate the problem enough for the very people we're trying to solve the solution for. And what happens is we end up creating solutions that are too costly, take too much resource. When quite frankly, you could have probably done 25% of the 100% build that you've done, for example, and solved a huge problem because it was that 25% that was really the problem. It wasn't the 100%. So it's always important to validate the problem, but align the validation of that problem with the clarity of your vision. Because if you know what you're trying to achieve and why, and that's been validated by the people that you're trying to do it with in detail, then you've already made it happen. You just need to manifest it. But it's already happened because you know enough detail about the why, the who, the what, the where, the when, the how. You've got all of that detail before you've even started the journey. It's just a matter of time. And as mission-driven leaders, we can often get so sucked into the reason why we want to achieve the mission that we forget about the hard work and the detail that needs to be taken on board and needs to be dealt with effectively in order to achieve it. So that's what I would say to mission-driven entrepreneurs. Be very clear about why you want to do what you're doing and make sure you're very clear about who you're doing it for.
I feel like I just
Otherwise,
went through an MBA class, Joe. This is beautiful. When I often write about the raison d'être for entrepreneurs, like what gets you up in the morning, and what is on your mind when you wake up, because those are the moments that you want to truly remember when shit hits the fan, so to speak.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's what keeps you. It's not the good times that keeps you, it's the bad times that reminds you why you're doing what you're doing. But you say it so much more eloquently than I can. It's You really should be teaching more too. Like I can see how others can get inspiration from what you say, and can learn from you. We need more
Appreciate
people
that.
to
Thank you.
think like that. No, I repeated myself again. So, all right. So we talked about entrepreneurs. We talked about people who are mission driven. What about corporate finance leaders? Right, we're switching from two sides of the emotion of the coin right now. So those that are looking at the numbers, those who are looking at the bottom line, those who do things more in a black and white and
Mm,
probably oftentimes more set in their own ways. Because
mm,
recently you wrote about, you think the corporate financial leaders need to be more entrepreneurial.
yeah,
What does that mean? Because it seems almost like conflicting with the image that we typically think of who they are and how they conduct themselves.
100%. So I firmly believe that the role of the CFO, sorry, or the financial leader in an organization has fundamentally changed. Um, it's not about evidencing the numbers, it's about extracting the actionable insight from the numbers that drive business strategy. Um, and even more so, it's about being able, as a financial leader, to adopt entrepreneurial mindsets that enable you to adjust and be adaptable to the volatility that has a direct impact on the numbers of the organization. So if we look at what's going on globally, as you mentioned earlier, in terms of trade wars, tariff changes, geopolitical impacts, cost of living crisis here in the UK, etc., all of these things have a direct impact on the bottom line of an organization. And I believe that it's the financial leader's responsibility to be able to interpret those bottom line numbers and be able to tell the story of what the numbers are telling the organization. Because the ability to extract that story from the numbers and communicate that story to the CEO, operating officer, sales and marketing team, product team, whatever the type of team and department, is going to be essential for them to be able to understand what that story means to them in their role. So that's what I mean by being more entrepreneurial. It's about adopting a much more growth mindset aligned with the personal development shifts that they need to go through in that role to be adaptable to the volatility that affects their bottom line. So from a GFA perspective, for example, I started the business because in my previous journey as an SME lender, we were actually lending money to businesses ourselves. We were part of that problem, right? We needed a particular type of business to come through the door who aligns with our risk profile so that we can get a return when we lend money to them. It's just as simple as that. And yes, we want to make sure we help him businesses fairly and making sure there's fairness across the market. But the reality is that's what we're there to do: lend, get a return, and lend again. And that didn't sit right with me because I felt that there were so many people that were underestimated who didn't fit our risk profile, and therefore we'll never get the opportunity for us to be able to support them. And if you extrapolate that problem across the whole lending landscape, you're talking a couple of $1 trillion problem. So GFA was always about, well, how can we use technology to assist finance providers to find new opportunities from these underestimated markets whilst reducing their risk, their cost, and their bias. And the last one is very important because from a financial leader's point of view, they're going to be biased naturally about what looks good for their organization. But technology can democratize the whole of that process. And that's what we did. So we designed our own proprietary AI model. We employed it, we class it as an inclusive AI model, which we put into our platform. And so we benchmark, we monitor, and we track the financial health of SMEs who are seeking finance, provide that insight into the risk models and workflows of those organizations. So they have more insight that allows them to make a much more informed decision about who they support and why, but also recognize the patterns of risk analysis that they are employing that's stopping them finding those opportunities. And it creates a much more inclusive ecosystem for all. But in order to make that work for an organization, we've also had to make sure that we provide additional support and services that help those financial leaders to think differently about the data, think differently about the insight, think differently about the deployment of the data and the insight. And so thinking entrepreneurially is about being willing to think outside the box. On a higher scale, I also think that financial leaders have been affected by the convergence of three things, which what I like to coin the triple D effect, really, which is the convergence of diverse people, diverse data, and diverse technologies. So when you look at the rate of diverse people and the lack of opportunities they have in certain financial spaces, those financial spaces are missing out on the diversity of thought, the diversity of experience, the diversity of conditioning, the diversity of it. They're missing out on the diversity that people bring to an organization. So this isn't just about gender, race, disability, or any other diversity, protected diversity characteristic, right? We're talking about bringing in difference and quote unquote normalizing it in the environment that you're in to maximize the innovation that you can gain from that integration. But if you couple diverse people with diverse data, when we look at the rate of data that we have, and I can't remember the stats as we speak, but we all know that data is flowing in at a faster rate than ever before from so many different sources. So financial leaders also have a responsibility to understand where they're getting their data from, understand the biases in those data sources, and making sure they're filtering out the best data that's most relevant to help them to get the most diverse and innovative insights that they can in order to make their organizations much more competitive, which then leads on then to diverse technologies. Because if you've got diverse people that are enabling you to make better use of diverse data, then the diversity of technologies means you can be at the front edge of the innovation and pioneering change faster than your competition, or if nothing else, achieving your long-term clarity of vision faster than ever before. Because we're now living in a world where everything is literally at our fingertips. But how we extract what we need from those things is key. And so I think the convergence of those three elements of, as I say, people, data, and technologies, but diverse people, diverse data, diverse technologies, and embracing that forces financial leaders to be more entrepreneurial because they're constantly dealing with difference, they're constantly dealing with innovation, they're constantly dealing with something other than the norm. And it's the norm actually is what's keeping you where you are. And in fact, over time, you'll be going backwards because as time goes on, you ended up going backwards. So stagnation is actually you do what you've always done doesn't actually help. You can do that and be
Negative
successful.
progress. Mm.
Exactly. You can be so successful doing what you've always done, but the natural evolution of time will actually push you back forward, push you backwards. So embracing inclusive innovation in that way, it's not a choice anymore. The world's moving too fast. The role of financial leaders has moved too far ahead. And the winners are going to be the ones who are at the front end of that wave, who are all, in fact, who are probably creating the next wave because they've been able to take all of that and use it in their organizations for the benefit of themselves and stakeholders that they're connected to. And I think that's important. I stand on that and I always will.
I will be right there with you. I am right there with you. I absolutely agree. I don't think there's any other choice, honestly speaking. Um,
Mm,
to that, I want to ask you. I've asked a few people this particular question in the show, and the answers always fascinates me.
yeah.
So I'm gonna pose that to you. If
Oh
you were,
no.
it's not a quiz, by the way. I'm just curious where your brain goes.
Uh-huh.
If you were to put three things away in a time capsule, and by the way, this was inspired by my kids, because they had to do that for this group project. So if
Mhm.
you were to put three things, physical objects away in a time capsule, and it will be
Okay.
open 30 years from now, what will be in there and why?
Could I ask a slight caveat to that? Will
Yeah.
I be alive? Will I be alive in 30 years when that's opened, or is it I
Let's
won't
hope
be
we'll
around
all be
anymore?
alive. Let's hope we'll all be alive. But the way things are going, there's never guarantee. But let's hope we'll all be around to open it.
Okay. So let's assume I'm still alive in 30 years and I've opened this time capsule or I've been there and someone's
Joe,
opened it,
I'm
whatever.
relying on you.
Because I put different things in there depending on it. Okay. If I was still alive, I'd put these three things in. Uh, a picture of my wife and my kids, first and foremost, because The reason being for that is that's what drives me every single day to do what I do. It
Okay.
separates it separates the professional Joel, if that makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
from the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. If I come home and my wife's not smiling, my kids are not smiling, I don't care about business. I want to know what's going on. Do you know what I mean? I know what's most important. Don't get me wrong. There's been times where I've really focused on business, and you kind of think, oh God, I should have done that. I should have. No, they come first and foremost before anything. I've walked out of actual sales presentation meetings because I've had to do something like big deals. Fortunately, it carried on, it went through. But I've stepped out a particular deal because I'm that adamant that that phone call was that important, or I had to leave and go and sort out that thing right there. So picture my wife and kids. I'd put a copy of, well, not a copy, but my first ever business card. So I started my first business when I was 24 years old. Um, it was a social enterprise. I was creating like mentoring workshops for kids at risk of exclusion in schools. Um, and I couldn't afford business card. I was flat as broke. I just had this idea that I wanted to do this, and I saw the need, and I wanted to do it, but I couldn't afford business cards. So I borrowed £10 from I can't remember someone. I think it was from someone in the family, and I bought a laminator and 10 plastic sheets. And then I went onto Microsoft Publisher, and I'm not endorsing Microsoft Publisher on your podcast, but I did use them. And I designed my own business card, and then I printed it off, and I got scissors and I cut out the cards, and then I put them in this plastic sheet, and I made my own business cards. Um, and I think I've still got two around somewhere. So I put one of them in there because it wasn't just about having a business card. I remember the sacrifices that were made by all those around me to enable me to make that jump from being employed to starting my first business with nothing. And I mean nothing. And it was an overnight decision. I remember saying to um, girlfriend, then wife now, babe, I've had enough. They don't believe in me. I'm not going into all of that, but basically, it's time for me to try and do what I've been doing for others, for myself. I've created a conversation with what could be my first client next week. I don't know how it's going to go, but I need to do it. And she gave me full support and always has done. And I had to make my own business cards to be professional. So I put one of those in. The third thing I would probably put in, hoping that I was alive to see it afterwards, would be my OBE medal. For all the reasons that I mentioned earlier, but um, it represents contribution, it represents sacrifice, it represents legacy, it represents journey, it represents me and all the facets and complexities of me as an individual. It's not a nice shiny thing that you got, and it was great to go Buckingham Palace and Prince William pinned on your chest, and it's great. It was about all those who've come before me, those whom I didn't know, those who I know, and those who are going to come after me. It represents so much in that little piece of gold. So I'd put that in there. Um, yeah, so those are the three things I'd put in, and hopefully I'll be alive to open the capsule and see what the journey has been representing those three things 30 years from now. Where will my family be? Where I'll be in business, and what does legacy now mean 30 years on? So that's why we do.
And I think by then we will need to make sure there's a box of Kleenex that will come with Grandpa Joe because we'll need that. See, you did not forewarn me. The one thing I thought I would need when I record the show with you, you should have told me. All right. Before we close, my dear friend, what gives you hope?
The human spirit. I know it sounds all twee and all come by, let's
No,
sit around a campfire and
group
have our
hug.
marshmallows and have a nice chat. That, I'm not advocating that. But what I am saying is, when it's all said and done, it is the human spirit that drives change. And some of the most greatest innovations, opportunities, successes have come in some of the most hardest times because of the human spirit. When people are faced with adversity, there's a lesson and there's a blessing at the same time. When people are going through difficulty, it forces them to find their true self in order to progress. The human spirit is a wonderful thing. And when you believe in faith or not, there's also the wider piece around that. But the reality is that we all have the ability to achieve amazing things, regardless of where we're coming from. And I think you should never forget where you come from, because that's what makes you who you are, right? It's a combination of all that experience and journey. Um, but you should also never forget where you're going, because that's who you're going to become. And the human spirit has a wonderful way of helping you to become the person that you don't know you're going to be, but you're going to be there anyway, and you're going to become that person anyway. So just embrace it, embrace the human spirit, and just try and share that with others. It's just as simple as that.
I think I need a speed dial to your phone too, along with that, because if anything, I think our conversation gave us hope. You give us hope. Your journey and
Oh,
how you
thank you.
navigated through it gives us hope. And
Thank you. I appreciate that.
no, I appreciate you. And
Mm.
I want to keep this going forever. But I know I cannot just like occupy you in front of the screen for the entire day. But I do very much look forward to continuing the conversation. And I think more people need to
Absolutely.
hear and learn from you because there's much, much, much to be done. And so for that,
Mm.
thank you so much, Joe, for joining us today.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Appreciate you. And for the rest of our listeners, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of One Vision. I don't know if we can top this ever, but this is one of my favorite episodes. And I don't say that lightly. For the last 5.5 years, we've been doing this. Thank you for sticking with us on the journey, and we'll talk to you next week.